Ribeiro-Addy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are three aspects to this budget I want to address. The first is the short-term emergency measures to mitigate some of the economic effects of the pandemic, bearing in mind the persistence of the virus is itself the fault of government policy. Today, Australia celebrates 10 straight days without a single domestic case of COVID-19. All across the world, billions of people are living effectively without the virus. Cases and deaths have been reduced to a handful or even zero because they took effective measures to suppress it. This government did not. So we had a public health disaster and an economic disaster. Countries which suppressed the virus have seen a relative hiccup in their economy, and they are now on the road to recovery. We, on the other hand, will suffer a surge in unemployment up to 5.9%, according to the Office for Budget Responsibility. This government deserves no plaudits for being obliged to spend hundreds of billions of taxpayers' money on measures to address a crisis they caused. We don't praise an arsonist because they call the fire brigade. This government was even worse. For example, the second wave is widely seen as the impact of the misconceived and reckless eat out to help out policy. The second aspect I want to address is the long-term or structural elements beyond the emergency payments. These structural elements can be summed up in two words: vicious austerity. Vicious austerity from every angle, which reduces the living standards of ordinary people, which deepens existing inequalities and provides unnecessary subsidies to big business. Robin Hood in reverse. Consider these elements of the budget. A £4 billion cut to public spending on services, which follows a 5.7% cut in last year's budget. A £2 billion hike on council tax payments, a freeze on income tax thresholds, which makes poor people pay more tax, and a public sector pay freeze, not to mention the exception of nurses' pay, the insult of just 1%. Ministers tell nurses there is no money left, but that is false. There's a £27 billion tax giveaway to businesses in the budget, which the OBR says will have no lasting effect, and £37 billion spent on a useless private test and trace system. The third and final insult is a Treasury Red Book which barely mentions inequality, in fact, just once. And yet again, no equality impact assessment was published alongside the resolutions. Because even though equality is our law, to this government it is expendable, it is an add-on, and policy after policy adversely impacts the most disadvantaged in our society. So in conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is responsible for the scope of both the public health and the economic disasters. This budget widens both even further.